Now, thread pool I have created. For every thread I am submitting a task. Now, pool.submit. Pool.submit means it is going to take one thread from the pool. It is going to take one thread from the pool. For that thread, it is going to assign one trigger. Then it is going to process. 10 threads we are creating in a pool. Pool.submit. Whenever I do pool.submit, it is going to assign a task to the thread. This pool.submit logic I am going to execute in a loop, guys. Pool.submit I am going to execute in a loop. For every pending trigger, I am going to submit the task for a thread. For every pending trigger, I will submit a task to the thread. So every thread is going to process one trigger. So I am creating a pool with the 10 threads. 10 threads will process the 10 triggers. If the 10 triggers are completed, then the same threads it is going to reuse. Executor framework is going to reuse the same threads and it is going to assign the next 10 threads with the 10 triggers. Second 10 triggers also completed. Then it will take the same threads from the pool, reusing, and it is going to submit the task again. Until all the triggers are completed, the framework is going to allocate the task to the threads available in the pool, and the threads are going to process the triggers which are available. So like this we can implement multi-threading here in order to process the triggers parallelly. In order to implement this multi-threading, we are using a concept called executor framework concept. What is the advantage of going with this concept, guys? What is the advantage of going with this concept? Can you tell me what is the advantage of going with this concept? Do we have a advantage or we don't have a advantage? Guys, what is the advantage if I go with this concept? Do we have a advantage or we don't have a advantage?
Sir, runtime we decide. Runtime we can pass the thread count to the this thread pool function.
Yes. Here we are not hard coding the thread count. Can I pass that thread count dynamically? Can I take that thread count value dynamically from a REST API? Can I take it as a path parameter? CO API is available to process the triggers. Can I take the thread count as a path parameter? Can I take the thread count as a path parameter, guys?
Yes.
We can take that thread count as a path parameter now. So if I go with this approach, tomorrow I want to run my project with the 20 threads. Do I need to change my program? Do I need to change my program?
No, just passing the parameter has to be changed.
That the parameter we need to supply. The parameter value we are going to supply dynamically. The parameter value we are going to supply dynamically. Parameter value we are going to supply dynamically. Got my point? Do I need to deploy the code in the production every day? Do I need to deploy the code in the production every day? Not required, because I'm not creating the threads manually. I am creating the threads by using a framework called executors framework. I'm not creating the threads manually. I'm creating the threads by using a framework called executors framework. I'm creating the threads by using a framework called executors framework. Now, here I have written some code using executor framework. I'm creating a fixed thread pool. That means how many threads you want to start, that number we are supplying here. That number I'm giving as a 10. Tomorrow if you want to create 20 threads, then you can give the number input as a 20. If you want 40 threads, then you can give the number as 40. So it based on the given number, it is going to create the threads and it is going to keep the threads in the pool. For every thread I am going to submit a task. What is the task I will submit for every thread? I will give one trigger for one thread. So 10 threads will be available. 10 triggers they will process at a time. Whenever first thread is processing the first trigger, second thread will wait for that, or second thread also will start the second trigger. First thread will process first trigger, second thread will process second trigger, third thread will process third trigger. No thread is going to wait here because all the triggers are independent. The threads are going to process the triggers parallelly. For 1 second, 10 threads are going to execute. They will process 10 triggers. After the 10 triggers are completed, framework will reuse the same threads again and will submit the next 10 triggers. After that, next 10 triggers. After that, next 10 triggers. So the reusability of the threads we are going to achieve by using executor framework. The reusability of the threads we are going to achieve by using executor framework. Got my point? Got my point, all of you?
Sir, just one thing, sir. Means, see, the reusability we are telling that apart from this approach, we are executing thread 1, 2, 3, 4, that manually we are doing, right?
Yep.
So, for, internally this executor service is doing some bit of like that, right?
Yes, internally it is doing that.
So, that what is it then? How it's doing that is advantage?
No,
That
it's
it,
no.
reusability.
Let me tell you. Here, you have created a 10 threads. Okay.
Yes, sir.
It is going to take one thread and it is going to allocate the task to the thread. Right? After the thread completed the trigger processing, after that what will happen? What that thread will do?
Yes, it goes idle. So rather than idle, it will.
Exactly. First it will take a thread, it will give a task to the thread. Once the thread task is completed, then it will take the same thread and it will give one more task. Once that means it is not going to keep the threads idle until all the triggers are until all the tasks are completed.
Oh, okay. And advantage is that, sir, that means that we are getting the pool that from the pool of threads that's minimal. Like
Yes.
10 we are using and reusing again 10. So
Exactly.
rest of them other program can be used. So memory consumption is increased in this case. Right?
Yes, right.
Sir, one small thing that apart from not for this one, like thread safe and unsafe we are saying now. So I have never got this idea. What is safe and unsafe? That means thread is safe.
Maybe we will talk about that, sir. Once we execute this, then we will talk about thread safety. Okay. Fine, guys. Now, here, if I want to show you the live threading implementation, then what is required for us? Can we insert 1000 records into triggers table? Can we see the execution time with one thread and execution time with 10 threads? Can we experiment on that? Guys, currently in the triggers table, how many records we have? The triggers table, how many records we have? Guys, come on, please speak out. How many records we have in the triggers table now? We have tested for only one record, so there is only one record is available in the triggers table. Can we see the power of multi-threading with one trigger? Can we see the power of multi-threading with one trigger?
No.
Then what we need to do?
We have to populate that pending rows, so much, so that then we can understand.
Right. Now, so can we take 1000 or 2000 triggers and can we experiment with multi-threading?
Yes.
Right. So what is your task for today?
To populate the spending table.
Insert the 1000 records into eligibility details table as well as CO triggers table. Insert 1000 records into eligibility details table and a triggers table. If you can insert 1000 triggers into eligibility table and CO triggers table, then we can see the program execution time with one thread and the program execution time with 10 threads. So if I run my program with one thread, how much time it is taking to process all the triggers? If I execute the program with 10 threads, how much time it is going to process? It is going to take to process all the pending triggers. Now, so today what I have explained to you is how many ways we can create the threads in the the Java. There are three ways we can create threads in the Java: by extending thread class, by implementing runnable, by implementing callable. The recommended way is a callable. Callable is introduced in Java 1.5. But here there is a problem. If we create the threads like this, then it is fixed number of thread count, fixed number of thread count. I can't increase the thread count and I can't decrease the thread count based on the requirement. So to avoid this problem, what I am going to do, I'm going to use one framework which is available in the Java. The name of the framework is Executors Framework. That Executors Framework got introduced in the Java 1.5 version. What is the benefit of going for this Executors Framework? If we go for the Executors Framework, it is going to create the threads dynamically based on the number which we have given. It is going to create the threads dynamically based on the number which we have given. Right. It is going to take care of the threads creation. It is going to take care of the task allocation. It is going to take care of the thread resource management and thread execution. Everything is going to take care of that. Everything it is going to take care of that. Okay. Now, how we are going to create this multi-threading in the real time? So here we are going to create the fixed thread pool by using executor service. So the threads will be created inside a pool. The threads will be created inside a pool. So once the threads are created inside a pool, then we can submit the task to the threads by using callable. So now I have a pending triggers. Pending triggers collection will be available. For each thread I will give one trigger. That means for one thread I am giving one trigger to process. 10 threads will be available, so I will give 10 triggers. After 10 triggers processing completed, the threads will go to idle state. When the thread is in the idle, executor framework will assign the next task to the thread. Until all the pending triggers are completed, I will be keep on assigning the task to the threads. Threads are going to process. So here threads are going to execute parallelly. Then my triggers also will process parallelly. Within the less time, we can process more number of triggers. Within the less time, we can process more number of triggers. Understood my point? Understood my point. Within the less time, we can process more number of triggers. Are you guys clear with this? Yes. Now, in order to do this theoretically, we understood what is executor service and what is the advantage of executor and how it is going to execute. We need to understand this practically by writing the code and by executing this. In order to write the code and in order to execute this, we need to have some triggers in the pending status in the table. We need to have some triggers in the pending status. So let's insert the triggers into database table by writing some procedure. So insert the triggers into uh, pending state. Let's assume 1000 triggers or 2000 records you can insert into the table. When you are inserting the records into triggers table, we need to insert the data into the remaining tables also. Because if I want to process a trigger, only trigger is not sufficient. We need to have the eligibility data also. We need to have the eligibility data also. We need a income data. We need eligibility data, and we need the email IDs for the citizen. Then we are going to do that. So in the tomorrow session, I will show you how to execute this with multi-threading. With a single thread, how much time it is going to take. With multiple threads, how much time it is going to take. Is this clear for all of you guys? Is this clear for all of you? Good. So if you have time today, please go through what is executor framework and how it is working. Tomorrow we will implement that executor service framework practically.